Lovely weekend. It is Monday, the 14th of November 2022, and I want to absolutely thank you for choosing KTN News as your channel of choice to inform you today. Every Monday we have stunning point, I should say, coming your way, where we take a critical analysis of what is happening as far as politics is concerned, and after issues that we know we should be dwelling on today, being a big day for the PSs, where there will be the vetting that commences today. And after issues have been raised regarding also the PSs and their appointments as well. So we will see how the vetting will go out today, and we'll be giving you a full, of course, broadcast of that, where the interviews will be carried on. We'll be joined this morning by Okongo Mogini, who is a senator of Nyamira. We'll also be joined by Hilary Sigei, who's a senator for Bomet. Also, David Cheng, member of parliament for Ugenya. And of course, also be joined by Yusuf Hassan, who's member of parliament of Kamukunji. You know the drill. Hit us on Twitter. KTN News KE is our Twitter handle, where also we shall share your comments, your thoughts, your questions as well, much later in the course of the program. But primarily, we're looking at what is happening with the current state of play as far as the economy is concerned. The Hustler Fund is bound to be set, of course, to roll out on the 1st of December. But a lot of issues have been put on the table as far as accessing this fund is concerned. And primarily, also, when we're looking at austerity measures in government right now, everyone is being told to tighten their belts, especially from the civil servants. But questions are being also asked regarding the performance of some of these parastatals. We have a report which has come out, and we shall be critically analyzing this, trying to see some of these parastatals that, of course, the exchequer is paying and making sure they are kept afloat, necessary for this country. Or should we hack back to Abdul Kadir, I should say, report on the task that he had on merging these parastatals that can now be streamrolled and shaken into place. That we shall be looking at also much later in the course of the program. But for now, we want to see what is fresh off the press this morning. And we begin with the bold paper here. How Ruto's budget cuts will affect you is what is a splash on the front page of the Standard this morning. Bit of a challenge with my technical, of course, aspect of it. I shall show you the soft copy much later in the course of the program. How Ruto's budget cuts will affect you. It says here, 300 billion shillings headache is the question. Treasury has asked all accounting officers to submit revised estimates this week that will see the government trim its spending. According to the circular, no project will be launched. An indicator that job creation will be slow. The move will also grossly affect civil servants, media and suppliers. That is what we have on the front page of the Standard today. Now the losers are here. 100%, that is a purchase of furniture, vehicles, of refurbishment of buildings done away with. Also 75% budget of printing, advertising and information supplies and services cut by 75%. Foreign travel and subsistence and other transportation costs and training expenses done away with. Also we have 75%, that is spending on research, feasibility studies, project preparations or preparation has also been slashed. 75% confidential expenditure and contracted professional and technical services reduced by that particular figure there. Spending on fuel and lubricants and hiring of transports or vehicles has been slashed by 75% as well. All new projects have been removed from the development vote. That story is well tucked away on page 4 of the Standard this morning. Vetting of PSs begin as government takes shape. Exercise kicks off in spite of 2 court cases and protests over gender balance, regional representation and bias against those with disabilities. This story tucked away on page 6 of the Standard this morning. Let's look at the teaser on top here. Sports doping. Our athletes getting fixed. We had a very interesting expose yesterday regarding this doping in the country, that the menace with our athletes. And amazingly as well, we have one of the parastatals that has performed dismally, that is meant to be checking out this. This is the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, which performed really poorly as far as watching over doping is concerned. Question we're asking, why should we be also having this particular agency in the country and doping itself is not really being stanched. That's flow of doping menace is not being stanched. That is a question. G20, Game of Thrones for Biden and Xi, and Kifutha calls its quit on politics finally. This is on page 21. Kifutha calls it quits on politics and how World Cup will be different. You can read all about this on page 38 and 39 of the Standard this morning. Move on right now. Let me just go back to the Daily Nation there, and then we continue with our discussion as well. Let me come to the Star, which has come up quickly. Azimio fallout, why ODM is unapologetic. That is what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. Bullish Orange Party insiders say they have nothing to lose as Raila will not run again. Jubilee and KANU have threatened to abandon coalition over parliamentary jobs. And this story is on page 2 of the Star this morning. And this is what I was telling you about. Our 144 parastatals failed performance targets. Top 10 performing state corporations are listed here. Top one there is National Irrigation Authority. And we have at the bottom as well, you can see the list, beginning with the Kenya Culture Center. I bet you didn't even know we have a Kenya Culture Center, but that also is taking or raking in some money from the exchequer. South Nyanza Sugar Company Limited, and I'll give you that list also in the course of a program as we discuss. In light of austerity measures, do we need some of these parastatals here in the country? What do? Do you feel their effect? Right? Special Economic Zones Authority, National Oil Corporation of Kenya. This is a list. Also, infertility made our marriages stronger. This is sentiments of some women there. You can follow their story on page 3 of the Star. Locals flee homes as camel herders invade villages. You can follow the story there. This is all about resource conflict on page 21 of the Star. On top here, opposed to West, Salah Yakub, MP behind push to scrap term limits for president. Read all about it on page 6 of the Star this morning. All right, let me show you what we have on the front page of the People Daily. Ruto, we will revive Aror and Kimwarer. This is what the president has said. It's all about food security. President pledges to revisit 2 controversial dams in Marakwet, whose construction led to the sacking of a cabinet secretary and the subject of a court case. You can follow the story on page 4 of the People Daily. He said, quote unquote, I know Aror and Kimwarer dams have had a lot of issues. I, however, assure you that the 2 will be done to their full completion during my tenure. You can follow the story inside the People Daily. Form 2's most absent from school. Read all the story that is well fleshed out for you on page 7 of the People Daily. Kenyans borrow 315 billion shillings from Fuliza, the Fuliza nation. Page 15, between April and September, an estimated 15 million people obtain loans from M-Pesa and M-Shwari for domestic consumption. You can follow the story on page 14 of the People Daily this morning. Let's move on. Taifa Leo, waliomwasi Raila walia. That is what we have as a splash there. Waliojitenga na kinara wa Azimio kuvumisha Ruto wajuta kutoteuliwa na serikali ya KK, that is Kenya Kwanza. You can see some of their faces splashed out or splashed on the front of Taifa Leo. Let me go back there on the front page, just to show you there. Some of his faces. We have Bwana Jack Ranguma, Daktari Evans Kidero, Bwana Kifutha Kibwana, who has now quit politics. We have Bwana Nicholas Gumbo, also Peter Edik Anyanga, David Musila, Olago Alwoch, Bwana Okoth Obado, Fredo Uta, and Martin Ogindo. You can follow the story inside Taifa Leo this morning. Also, Waziri Owalo apeleka minofu ya Ruto Nyanza. You can follow the story on page 4 of Taifa Leo. Pressure kwa Ruto kutimizia raia ahadi. That story is tucked away on page 3 of Taifa Leo this morning. Let's buckle down to some business. Share of financially stable Kenyans halves in 5 years. This is a pinch. everyone is feeling it. Cost of living and runaway inflation to blame. COVID shocks leave wealthy households on shaky grounds. That shaky, it's a typo there. It says the proportion of financially stable Kenyans have more than halved in the past 5 years amid runaway cost of living and stagnant pay. A new household survey shows this. Latest findings of financial access. This is FinAccess household survey shows that the share of adults with high levels of financial health to enable them to afford the day-to-day financial needs, deal with emergencies and invest in future goals, technically called top wealth quintile, shrunk to 15% last year from 40%. You can read all about that on page 2 of the People Daily. Nakuru, Nyandarua, top list of counties hooked on betting. Nakuru, Nyandarua, top list of counties hooked on betting. And SMEs bagged 3.3 billion shillings in state credit guarantee program. You can follow all that inside the Business Daily today. And KVDA fails ethnic balance test. This is according to Auditor General at banks to use treasury bonds as loans security. You can follow all that inside the Business Daily this morning. Let's go to Uganda. We see what is happening in Uganda. Why government is seeking 2 trillion shillings loan. This is broke government. It's not only here in the country, but also happening in Uganda. The new government requests to potential private sector lenders in the world to advance its 500 million to close a budget gap comes amid ongoing syndicated 1.7 trillion shillings borrowing. This paper reported in August that ministries and agencies were cash strapped. This is Ugandan shillings. You can follow the story on page 4 of the Daily Monitor. Also, fight erupts over 270 billion shillings payout to ex-UPTC staff. And be fruitful and multiply. Not mortify, but multiply. Right, and my tongue needs to wake up this morning. That is a Butaleja man with 12 wives, 102 children. 102 children. Okongo Mogeni. Yes, 102 children. A man in Uganda with 12 wives. He beats Akuku Danger. Yeah. Right? Akuku Danger.
Must be related.
They must be related. And you can see that actually, the children are here. This is just a snippet of some of them there. That is happening in Uganda. You can grab a copy of the Daily Monitor. Allow me just to introduce our guests. I'll continue to show you some of the dailies on the split as we continue because we're strapped for time as well. Okongo Mugeri, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Hilary Sigei, thank you for joining us.
Good
right?
morning.
It's been a while. Also, Yusuf Hassan, thank you for joining us. Eagerly waiting to be joined by David Ochieng also this morning. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Right, maybe just to get the highlights of the week from you, Okongo Mogeni, Hilary, Yusuf, let's just begin with you. Last week, what was your highlight that you can tell us? This is what really stood out for me as far as politics is concerned. Not generally politics, but, all-rounded way of life.
Well, a lot of issues. We dealt with the commissioners in Parliament, and I'm glad to see one of our new commissioners, Senator Mogeni, here.
So this is done and dusted?
Yes, indeed. And we're now moving on to the principal secretaries, which is the third, I think, the second layer of completing the package, the government package, as far as the functions of the states are concerned. And so I think this would be an important week because a lot of the ministries are not working fully. They're still assisted by the previous principal secretaries, and I think a lot of Kenyans want the government to get on with the job of managing the country. So I think that would be of a great interest to a lot of people. And I finally also that we were happy to have dealt with the Kenya Airways strike, which was paralyzing the country and causing a lot of losses. And somehow it appears as if sanity prevailed there, and we were able to move on with the usual activities at the national airline.
Thank you. Sigay.
Thank you, Debal, and good morning once again. The highlight that I actually wouldn't want to forget is the visit by the South African President, Ramaphosa, where part of the gains that we got was, I would call exportation of Kiswahili as a national language. That to me was the highlight of the week, because of obvious benefits that we're going to get. We will have our teachers going to South Africa, and as he said, we will comfortably travel to South Africa without necessarily having to look for a visa of some sort. That was the highlight that I got. And of course, we tied it up with the issue on the Parliamentary Service Commission that Honorable Yusuf has mentioned, where we had some very nice ending, and of course, happily, that my senior colleague, Senior Counsellor Congo Omogeni, is now in office, and a number of us will look forward to having that very good representation at the Parliamentary Service Commission, and of course settling down by the government now. As Yusuf has said, we are almost rolling our sleeves to now begin the performance by the Hasla government in serving the people of Kenya. As we speak right now, beginning today, I think the first batch of the nominees to be principal secretaries will be interviewed, running through, I believe, the week and beyond. And yes, we are almost getting there, so that we completely allow now people to ask the government of their performance in the context of the commitments they made in the course of the political campaigns that ended in the elections of the month of August. So the week that began last week ended well yesterday with, of course, what we would call service to the people by appearing in various charges, thanking the people of Kenya by bringing in the UDA government. Thank you.
All right. But if we look at the Daily Nation, just briefly, it says a man on a mission there as the headline. Busy allies and adversaries conquer that Dr. Ruto is a workaholic who is excessively meticulous. And it says that President Ruto has held 126 publicized meetings in his 60 days in office, hosting as many as 4 a day, amid pressure to deliver on the many promises he made on the campaign trail. Nation Newsplex analysis shows that since his swearing in on September the 13th, he has not been engaged on only 5 days. It has not been engaged on only 5 days. This is well fleshed out on page 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. But the question they're asking, even you look at page 4 of page 6, it says, President busy, but Hasla yet to feel his hard work. We're yet to feel his hard work. All right? Could we be also just be on a hamster wheel? All right? Busy, but no action yet, or we'll expect action and the fruits later? Let's hear from Okongo Mogini.
Thanks, Debal. First, I want to thank my colleagues here, who brought this drama around the appointment of parliamentary service commissioners to an end on Thursday last week. And really, without Parliament standing firm, both the Senate and National Assembly, somebody somewhere would have had their way. But really kudos to Parliament that demonstrated bipartisanship and that it can really stand together on an issue. And I really want to thank the members. I was overwhelmed by the support that I received from my colleagues, both sides of the aisle.
Yes.
The majority and the minority. Because without them, really, I wouldn't be here as a commissioner of PSC. So I really thank them, and I hope that going forward on some very key critical national issues, we can have the kind of bipartisanship that I witnessed on Thursday. Now, coming back to the politics, and I mean, I want to thank God because of the rains. I was in Nyamira over the weekend. The rains are back, though hailstones really destroyed our tea on Saturday and Sunday. But the rains are back. There is hope. We can now get vegetables and people can get food. So we thank God for the rains. That gives us hope now. The dust is settling. Now, speaking to the support base that supported the president, the Asla Nation, it's true. I was in Nyamira. I went to visit a family of a boda a friend of mine, the late George, who passed away last week on Tuesday. He had brought some trees to Nairobi to sell, and he died at night on his way back to Kisii. And I mean, I was talking to the border leaders, and they were saying that, you know, we really came out in full support of the president, and we really hoped that as soon as he takes office, we'll see the results trickling down towards the common Mwananchi. But the Wananchi have not failed President William Ruto. You know, they expected that this Hustlers Fund will be released to support them. The conditions will not be so stringent. The Mama Mbogas out there, they still haven't felt the trickle-down effect of this president. So, Sigei, I think you have a job cut out for you. Okay. You almost feel like Kenyans are saying we have now lost any expectation of getting an impact that will really turn around our lives. You know, the issue of school fees is still a challenge. When you meet citizens out there, is a challenge. Healthcare is still a problem. It's still expensive. They are still being, forced by circumstances to take the sick ones to private hospitals. The NHIV is helping, but not adequate. The people are still being asked to raise money to pay bills. So I think the president should now focus on doing things that will have a direct impact on the people. The cost of food is still expensive. The cost of food is still expensive. Basic commodities like maize meal, sugar is still out of reach for many Kenyans. Many Kenyans, they are agonizing just to make ends meet on a day-to-day basis. It remains a big challenge, and this is the bulk of the support base. You know, people really turned out to vote for the Asla Nation out there. They are still expectant they are pregnant with expectation that some miracle somewhere will come and turn around their lives. So I hope as the president rolls out all these programs, he should be more worried about the plight of the poor Kenyan down there, who is still expecting that the UDA administration will change their lives. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Let's hear from David Cheng. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Right.
How's everyone doing today?
Pretty well.
We had a good weekend.
Yes, we did. We're just getting, we wanted to know your highlights of the week so far. What really stood out for you? Wow. And by the way, I was actually in your constituency, right?
Yes. Yeah. So many things.
Are you from that region?
No, I went actually for, just to visit a friend there, for a bar of my friend as well. Yeah.
We're also your friends. Next time, visit us too.
Actually, passed by there, yeah?
Kamkuji is just next door here.
Yeah. So what happened to the Nyandu bridge? The bridge there?
In Ugenya?
In Ugenya, yes.
Yeah. A couple of things happened in the last week since we were here. I think the pilots, went back to work. And in the same week, very good news that South Africa and Kenya are trying to put together a mega airline. For me, that was quite key. And I'm hoping that can work. Because, South Africa and Kenya are very, can I say, important countries in Africa. But we've never done business together well. The level of competition between the two countries has been really high. And that's why you've seen our companies don't quite get a foothold in South Africa and vice versa. You've seen the last 20 years, South African supermarkets have tried pitching tent here and they have not been able to get fruit. ShopRite came and left, came and I think is now holding up, and remember the beer wars of those days of Castle Lager and
yes.
you know. So for me, the highlight was that one really. The thawing of relationships, the opening up between the two countries for me portends a huge investment job creation opportunities for us. Number two, in the same week, is if you asked me, the continued push by the president to get it right. We had the first cabinet meeting happening in the last week, and that last week, us from Nyanza, so the cabinet approving the construction of the 1 billion fishing training center in Kisumu. And for us, this is key because our fishing has been so manual. Our fishing has been by heart. We've not had investments that would go to making Lake Victoria usable for us. And so if you're talking about job creation, and the government says, we want to equip, we want to train, we want to capacity build people from that region, or people want to invest in aquaculture to make it good. And so for me, that was quite key. And finally, the fact that we are now having a government being put together. Hoping that by the end of this week, we'll be done with the PSS. And then we can, hit the road running. Yes.
Okay, all right.
You asked about the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge.
I'd met Kenha 2 weeks ago, actually, on the bridge. Here's what happened. We asked for a road to be done in our constituency in 2016, and they did the road, and unfortunately, they forgot to put the budget for the bridge. And so the road has been through for the last 4 years now.
Is it by design or?
And the bridge.
This forgetting. Sometimes we need to question the forgetting.
Let me tell you, this is a road that I visited Ministry of Transport, Debal, 277 times. Between 2013 and 2016, I visited the Ministry of Kenya and the Ministry of Roads. I would go there thrice a day sometimes. So when there was room for us to get whatever we could get, I said, let's go ahead. So I think it was a hurried tender. The construction started in 2017 May, and along the way, we discovered that there was no provision of the bridge. But then from 2020, they got a budget, and they started doing the bridge. Along the way, again, the money got finished, and the contractor pulled out. So we are now, the bridge you saw is an old bridge. It's probably a 60, 70-year-old bridge that is now being used as we wait for the main bridge to be completed. I'm certain that we've now resolved the issue with the contractor, and they will be going back to the site within a month. Yeah.
All right, and the Sege Road that also have, I think it's got a very interesting activity around it. Is there any plans in the offing to try and tarmac that road?
Which road?
Segere.
Segere. That's another constituency really. But in 2019, when that former president visited that time, I think that part of the county had requested that to be done. So there are a couple of roads there, including one in the constituency that had been put in plan from 2019. Now, I think 4 or 5 years later, it's not been done. We are pushing for them. We hope they can be done together. Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's just focus on what is on the front page. I'd asked about Ruto man on a mission so far. Is he on a hamster wheel so far? So much activity, less feelings on the ground as it's been put, people not feeling the effect. When are we to see this? He has asked for 1 year for us to feel the effect of, at least him turning the economy around, abating also this inflation. And we're given to understand also many countries in the world as well are facing this. So we're not really an exemption. So will he also ride on that particular stock of excuse of, this is the world and what is happening right now?
I think the president is a compulsive workaholic. He's hit the ground running. He's definitely not someone you would fault in terms of his energy and his drive. And I think he's now focusing on, the low-hanging fruits, which is what I think any other leader would have done, traveling to critical meetings in the region, the United Nations, the COP meeting and so on. And some, to a certain extent, he's lucky in that the climate change conference is taking place now, because he has a bit of a background in that. And in fact, he has articulated a very robust approach to climate change and Kenya's role as the next big green renewable energy country. But I think when it comes to the promises made during the election, then there is a sticking point there. There I think the government would be stuck for quite a while, because much of what was said at the political rallies was propaganda. Propaganda campaign to persuade the Mwananchi to support the Kenya Kwanza manifesto and government. And that requires a lot of work. And some of it is almost impossible. I think in particular cases, the president overpromised. And it's quite a stretch now, purely from an economic point of view, is that the cost of doing many of those promises that have been made by the president are just beyond the reach of Kenya and the government of Kenya, because we simply do not have the resources to be able to do those things. The other factor, the cost of living, the price of fuel, this again are things that are relatively out of the hand of any government. And although it is hanging as one of the key promises, and a lot of the ordinary people, local people, are suffering, the high cost of living is squeezing poor people who predominantly voted for the president. So I think that will take quite a time, if at all it happens, because we simply will not be able to do many of those things. Look at the Hustler Fund, for example. It was during the election. It was put out there as a propaganda hook because it was considered to be doable and interest-free. Now it has come. It is becoming into force. There's a legislation in Parliament to anchor the Hustler Fund in the law of the country and to get budgets going. But borrowers have to pay for it. It's not a cheap loan, and I doubt whether it will meet the needs of many hustlers, because it just is beyond their reach at more than 10%, and many other issues that the government is likely to backtrack because it simply cannot do. But of course, the president is on a run. He will do what he can do, but I think Kenyans should wake up to the fact that many of the propaganda promises made by the government are simply not going to be met. They were just for the elections, and that's it.
So we have stringent measures on the Hustler funds as well. 50 billion shillings maximum capital of the fund to be appropriated by the National Assembly.
At what interest rate? Have you looked at it?
Yeah, with the interest rate, we have 18 plus mandatory age of all applicants, and fine liable for an offence of abuse of the fund is 10 million shillings. 5 years term of imprisonment liable for abuse of the fund. Do we have any details on when we talk about liable offences or fine liable for an offence of abuse of the what really constitutes abuse of this fund?
Dibal, thank you very much. First of all, let me comment on the headline on the Daily Nation. Man on a mission, 126 meetings in 60 days. That translates to almost 2 meetings in a day, or even sometimes beyond. Now, that in itself is a confirmation of a government or a president that wants to work, because you can't get into office and begin to work without necessarily having to put in place sufficient structures. And right to that is, of course, what we talked about earlier on, the closure on the recruitment of the top executives in the government, which we're looking at the latest being now the PSS coming into place. We've had the first cabinet meeting was convened last week, where a raft of issues were a subject of approval, including now that we've just read on the publication of the regulations on the Hustler Fund, including approval of the government's desire to do stringent budget measures to save up to 300 billion Kenya shillings, and also a decision as regards the pending bills. This, Debal, is one of those things that we can say take home from the various meetings convened within a short time. Now, you've asked about the Hustler Fund, and I would want to disagree with Mheshimiwa here about that was a propaganda campaign. The Hustler Fund will be put in place. You've just read the regulations, which I believe will be tabled in the House tomorrow by the relevant personnel. That is published already by the CS Treasury and will be tabled in Parliament tomorrow for purposes of public participation. Now, this fund, as you read, is an amount 50 billion. The reason as to why those regulations are being published for purposes of public participation is to ensure that it does not become any other fund that goes in. The person to benefit is not known. The money that goes out is not going to be put into use. Documentations, because when you look at the regulations which were published on Thursday, you are expected as a prospective beneficiary to give out information about your creditworthiness, about the kind of business that you are doing. The management board equally is expected to review those applications. And it's for obvious reasons, Debal. This is public fund. This is a fund that is aimed at supporting the hustler. When a senior counsel here, Morgan, says that the hustler has not failed this government, it is because of the need to put in place regulations like this one, which we are putting in, to ensure that when that money is released, it is put into good use. And, well, it's a fact that there isn't anything for free, by the way, Debal. And I think the hustler government is that which would want every Kenyan to be responsible, such that if you are advanced a facility in the form of the Hustler Fund to finance a project, to support your business enterprise, it is not for free, because you must also be responsible beyond just getting the money. You must pay back that money with very negligible interest. When the president says that this government will not borrow from any source that would demand an interest rate of beyond 10, there is no way the same government can give out the Hustler Fund at a very crazy interest rate. It is expected that if I, as Hilary Sigei, benefits from the Hustler Fund by getting a facility out of it, I must pay back so that the pool of that resource goes back to another deserving individual hustler businessman out there. Because otherwise, we will just be giving out money, and how can we replenish the source of this fund? It has to be paid out. The issue is we needed to make sure that when these regulations are run, for example, out there in the public, they will be made aware that this money is coming for your benefit from the government, with very limited regulations, of course, in terms of you will not be expected to give out a security. You will not be expected to immediately repay the amount that you've been given. There is a grace period with which you will get. You will not be told, give us a title deed for us to be able to give you the money, because it's not expected that you have. As a struggling hustler, as a struggling businessman who's just begun, it is the government's responsibility through the Hustler Fund to give you at least a startup. And this startup is what we are doing. So it is something that I know in a very short while, we will now feel the impact of the commitments the government had while it was campaigning in actualizing all this out there to the public.
Yusuf, you had that right now.
Yes, Debal, in fact, let's put this hustler idea, the Hustler Fund idea, into context. At the beginning, when it came up in public rallies, political rallies, the campaign rallies, it was a grant. It was a grant to uplift poor people and give them access to capital. And the biggest obstacle facing the ordinary person, the so-called hustler, the poor man, is access to capital. And the expectation was that the whole idea of setting up this fund would deal with that particular problem of access to capital. Now, what we have is a hustler fund, which is just like any other bank loan. It is a misnomer to call it a hustler fund. It is just another loan at 10% interest rate. It is beyond the reach of any poor person. So again, that great idea of helping the poor get access to capital was just another idea of persuading the ordinary person, the poor mwananchi, to buy into the Kenya Kwanza political program. But once Kenya Kwanza is in office, it is just telling these people that it is not likely to get anything. Of course, you would argue any loan would require a collateral. You need to pay it back. It has to be stringent in the sense that this is public money, not a bank money that you would get from the private sector. And the public and the taxpayer has to be protected. But what happened to this hustler fund from a grant to a low interest, now to a high interest loan? It just clearly shows that the intentions were not to help the poor, but to win an election. Mm-hmm. And now that they've won the election, they don't give a damn about the poor man out
Let's say because we would have thought at 10% interest rate, I think that is a bit way too high. If you're talking about the hustler fund itself, should we or should the government have considered, like we do have from some of the MSMEs as well, with a guaranteeing scheme that you don't have actually to have interest, but you can have a guarantee scheme that the government is cushioning you at the end of the day, just as what they're doing with the MSMEs right now, and the guaranteeing scheme that we have from the Kenya guarantee is even with the mortgage. I know there's something like that.
Yeah, I hope Wakili Sigei speaks to his constituents, the hustlers, the mama mboga, the border people, just to get a feeling of what their view is. And I just came back from Nyamira yesterday. I was there from Friday. And as I told you, there is disconnect now between the voters who voted for President William Ruto and the people who are driving his policy. The people who have come up with this hustler fund. People fear loans, Debal. When you go to mwananchi out there and you tell them that the government wants to give you a loan at 10%, the first reaction is, we don't want that money. What the wananchi are expecting is a government fund that, even if there was to be an interest, maybe something small, not more than 3%. But this one of 10%, I can tell you it's very unattractive to wananchi out there. Because they have also had...
allow me to correct something.
Let him finish. Yes. No, I'll give you a chance. Let him just...
they have also had very bad experiences with these funds before. When I was speaking to women groups, they said before, the government has come up with funds like Wezo Fund. They were given money, and then they woke up one day and found auctioneers on their doors. People even lost cattle, those who had given their cattle as security. So when you tell wananchi that the government wants to give you a loan at 10%, the first reaction is, we don't want that money. They say the president lied to us. He told us he was going to give us money to help us boost our businesses. So the beginning point is that one, there is a disconnect. And I think when the people who are elected in UDA start engaging the wananchi, you will see the reaction. So that immediately, for me, is problematic. And then this idea of us telling wananchi that we want to look at your credit reference record. All these guys are Fulisa. Some of them have already blacklisted, so they will not even be beneficiaries. So if there is room, and it's good that these regulations are going to come to the House, if we want to help wananchi, we need to critically look at these regulations, make this fund easily accessible, remove this punitive. The commercial interest is 13%.
Yes.
So you're just chopping off 3%. This is an expensive loan. You can calculate if you give a mwananchi 100,000, what will be the repayment? How much interest will that attract? So it's a lot of money. So let's speak frankly to the president and tell him that making this Hustler Fund to be a loan that is attracting 10% is really not in tandem with what the wananchi expected. Let's review this. If this is government fund is a government fund meant to help wananchi, let the interest be at least 3%, but not 10%. Dibal. Sige, you had something?
Yes, I wanted to correct. The 10% which both you yourself and Honorable Yusuf has made reference to is with regards to the government's policy, where the president, actually at page 10, the president was saying we cannot borrow at 10%. The Hustler Fund is not coming out to our people at 10%, no. And that is...
What is the percentage?
That is
can
the difference.
Can you tell us?
I'm heading there, yes. When we speak about the credit score, the credit score in the regulations is expected to give the Kenyans the ability to ensure that even if I borrow today, I repay tomorrow, even if it's Fuliza, Honorable Yusuf. The issue is, let us have Kenyans be responsible for what they do. If I borrow 10 shillings, at least I repay, whether it's 5 or 10. It is also not a loan, so to speak. The interest rate will be coming from the regulations. It cannot be 10%, it cannot be 3%.
What is the percentage?
It cannot be 10%.
All right, can we hear from
No,
David?
because I think we must speak about this in context, Dibal. When the campaigns were going on, and that time was in Azimio, every side had their own funds. Every side had their own way of trying to sort out an issue. And what was the issue? The issue was access to capital to do business. That was the issue. And both sides of the divide had a proposal at that time. In fact, in Azimio even had a proposal of giving out 6,000 shillings to some selected, families. And so I would like us to look at this contextually. What are you trying to address? Not throwing good money after bad, but what are you trying to address as a people? And the idea is, can we be able to help the hustlers, as it were, get access to resources for doing business? That was the idea. And so the idea that this fund would be ready within a month, or even 1st of December for me, is neither here nor there. What we must be looking at is, do we have the framework to have it work? And number two, are the people that want to give the money prepared to receive the money and use it for the right reasons? Because Yusuf and I and Kumar here have been in Parliament, and we've been giving out to Wezo Fund. There have been so many funds, Youth Fund. How have they performed? And I can tell you, as a person who has seen this kind of funds working out, if we place the cart before the horse by doling out money, even if it's a 10% or whatever percentage, doling out money to people because they're hustlers, without looking at what they're going to use the money for, without building their capacity and training them, so that the money is being used for the right reason, then we'll still end up with the same thing. So questions that I would ask personally would not be about whether it's a grant or not, Honorable Yusuf. I'll be asking whether the hustlers, when they receive the money, are going to be using the money for the right reasons. Look, Wezo Fund, by the way, Honorable Mogeni, nobody in this country has been auctioned for Wezo Fund. Nobody. I can tell you that. You can tell that to the bank. Because government doesn't work like that. This money, I'm certain no one will be auctioned because of this Hustler Fund. Government doesn't auction anybody in this kind of situations. No. You've been around and you can give me examples. But what personally I would look at in this is, so, Wezo Fund, young people have been receiving money, some of them using the money to pay dowry, some of them using money to, do their things that are not business oriented. And so in this regulation, I would first look at what are the allowable expenditures. Where can someone spend this money on? Where can someone invest this money on? That would be my first port of call. Secondly, when are we building the capacity? Before you receive the money, what kind of training, what kind of capacity building? Who is going to help you incubate if you're starting a business? Who are what you could call the mentors? I'll be looking at that whole framework first before I even go to the interest. So this Hustlers Fund, this is how it's going to work. These are the frameworks for ensuring that there's compliance, and this is how we're going to train our people. Then after that, I would come to what my two colleagues have said, the interest rate. And that we can sort it in Parliament. Because this money is not going to Azimio or, hustlers, as it were, only. These money are going to go to Kenyans. And so all of us have interest in Parliament, both the majority and the minority, to ensure that when this fund is rolled out, it works. And I agree with the Congo Mogeni that this interest rate can be capped even at 2% if you want in Parliament. It can even be at 3% because it's Parliament that's going to make these regulations. And so I would imagine that when the President talked about this fund in the campaigns, I would imagine that the reason was to ensure that some people get resources. Now, on to the issue that I think has been harped on by both my colleagues, Yusuf and Commissioner Mogeni. I think we are responding too soon. Yusuf and I in Parliament, I don't know what you have done as parliamentarians in the last 3 months that you would say you've done in your constituency that is being felt. 3 months. I don't think we've been able to give out bursaries as we used to do. I don't think we've been able to build any classrooms or buy any bus yet. It's 3 months. So I think we should also be modest as we look at what the President is doing. I would be more worried if the President came to power and the following day started doing these things you're asking us to do in the last 3 years. Because there must be a foundation for everything else we're going to do. And so, personally, right. And going back to this story of 126 meetings, I can tell you that the meetings that he has done are 600, not 126. The meeting this guy has done in the last 60 days, this is modest. Yes. Because if you hang around him, he does 10, 12 meetings a day. And this, for me, are meant to ensure that he starts right. And personally, where I sit, I'm encouraged by his work ethic. I'm encouraged by his approach and discipline towards what he wants to do. And I'm really patient and waiting to see the fruits of these meetings.
All right, we want to take a short break, but I want to also, when we circle back, we think about what Congo Mogeni was talking about, the auctioneers as well, because we have debt collectors that will be deployed to Kenyans who will not be able to actually, pay back this money. And what sort of treatment will we be getting from debt collectors as well? So that will be another probing question, especially when we know money is concerned and people cannot repay back. You're listed at the CRB. Also, debt collectors are on your door. You'll feel the heat. We'll take a short break.